Hello everybody! Today I'm going to show you how you can turn a really big thrifted polo into a cute wrap dress. That's today on Refashioning with Rachel. First, while wearing the shirt, place a pin where you want your waist to be. Then draw a straight line where you placed that pin and cut. And set aside the bottom for later. Then cut off the collar and the collar band. And fold the shirt in half, being sure to match the shoulder seams and the side seams. Then take a shirt that fits you well and fold it in half the same way. Place it upon the thrifted polo and draw around the seams, adding 1/2 inch for seam allowance. And cut. Cut off the button placket and cut off these leftover pieces from the bodice. We will be using these pieces to add to the front of the bodice, so we have some crossover. Pin these pieces to the front of the shirt with right sides together. And sew. Use a zigzag stitch for the seam so that it can stretch with the fabric. Now that we have some extra fabric to work with, draw in a straight line that connects the neck hole to the place where the extra scrap is added to the front of the shirt, and cut. Moving on to the sleeves. Place your shirt sleeve over the sleeve of the polo, offsetting it about 1/4 inch from the top, and trace around the seams, adding 1/2 inch for seam allowance. By offsetting it a little bit from the top of the shoulder seam, the new sleeve will be a little bit bigger than the original, which we can gather up at the shoulder. Cut this piece out. Make a notch at the center of the shoulder and use that piece to cut out an identical piece from the other sleeve. And make a notch in this sleeve as well. Line up the sleeves with the armholes and pin the sleeves to the armholes starting at the shoulder seam, and then from each end of the armholes working your way back up to the center. When you get close to the shoulder seam, there should be some extra fabric in the sleeve. Gather this fabric into a few little pleats to make it fit into the armhole. and pin the pleats in place. And do the same thing on the other side. And sew. And now the sleeves have this lovely feminine puffiness at the shoulders. Fold the front of the bodice over the back of the bodice with right sides together, and pin along the underarm seams and the side seams. And sew. Now returning to the bottom portion of the polo, find the center front and cut it open. Make a mark at the center back on the raw edge side and sew a basting stitch all along the raw edge. And a basting stitch is just the longest possible straight stitch that your sewing machine can make. And be sure not to go backwards and forwards at the beginning and the end of the stitch. And leave long threads when you're finished. And this step is optional, but I decided to close up these little slits at the bottom of the skirt by using a multiple step zigzag and making sure the two sides of the slit was lined up with the center of my presser foot. Now we want to mark our bodice into 4 equal sections. So find the center back and make a mark, and fold in each of the 2 sides to that mark, and mark the center of that. Pull on one of the basting stitch threads to gather up the top of the skirt until it is as wide as the bodice. Then, with right sides together, pin the bodice to the skirt, lining up the marks on the center back and the other marks on the bodice with the side seams of the skirt, and pinning each end of the bodice to the ends of the skirt. And sew. Working with 1/4 section at a time, and evening out the gathers as you sew. And then pull out the basting stitch threads. On one of the side seams, open up the seam just enough so that your finger can go through. And sew a little box around that seam to keep it from unraveling any further. With some scrap fabric, cut out 2 strips that are 2 inches wide and as long as your waist. I had to piece 4 strips together to get 2 long strips. Then fold each strip in half long ways and make a stitch about 3/4 of an inch away from the fold. Then turn these strips right side out. This step is also optional. I chose to add a decorative wavy stitch all along the strip to sort of flatten it out and make it look a little bit neater. And then hem the entire opening of the dress. I didn't want to lose any fabric real estate here, so I just folded back the raw edge a little bit and secured it with a zigzag stitch. When you get to the waist, add one of your ties and make sure it's securely stitched by going back over it a couple of times. And then continue hemming around the neck hole. Until you get back to the other side of the waist and stitch on the other tie. Finish off the other ends of the tie simply by folding it over twice and securing with a stitch. And then this project is finished. So here's a reminder of how it looked before. And here's how it looks now. Thank you so much for watching this video. I really hope you enjoyed it. Please like and subscribe if you did. And let me know if you have any refashioning ideas. And have a beautiful day.